it shows that we are live streaming already. I think we are live. I think we are live. So, okay. Here we go. I'm just going to say right away that I was anticipating the tech to go right, and it looks like it's gone right, but I've been a little bit nervous about it. So I think we're live, and here we go. Which is wonderful. So just as people get the notifications on LinkedIn to join the live, those that have clicked attend, we can just maybe very gently just mention what we are here for and just introduce ourselves. And so if you are joining us or watching on replay, because this is being recorded and will be shared with those of you who aren't able to be here live with us. We are here for a conversation with my wonderful colleague Lisa from, well, she'll introduce herself where she is, for a conversation about navigating quiet burnout. When we got together a few weeks back, we got talking about the aspect of burnout that we feel hasn't really been talked about enough. And so we wanted to bring this here. We will be exploring when high functioning hides deep depletion and the hidden cost of quiet burnout. And more specifically, we'll go into what high functioning is and how coping is a survival strategy. We'll also explore how long-term stress and early conditioning, such as childhood trauma, as well as cultural conditioning, affects our health, and how it shapes leadership. It also how it shapes how we show up in relationships and in daily life in general. Last but not least, we'll also explore the shift from depletion to more of an embodied and sustainable ways of leading and living. Since this is an embodied perspective and a trauma-informed perspective, we'll have a different angle to what you may have come across before in terms of how we talk about and understand and work through burnout. So with that said, I am going to just quickly check whether we've got anyone with us, and just to make sure that if you are just saying hi in the comments, that I see it. So that's all up here. So, Lisa, do you want to introduce yourself, and then I'll introduce myself after you, so that I pause for a moment and give you a chance to come in.
Sure. Thank you for that lovely welcome. Hi, I'm Lisa, and I am a somatic practitioner and an embodiment mentor. And I have a background in movement and somatic trauma healing. And the work I do is all about the relational, the subtle dynamics that shape how we show up with each other, how we show up with ourselves, especially in moments of pressure or disconnection. I bring a trauma aware and body-based lens to leadership and organizational life, and help name what often goes unseen. And this is part of what we will be talking about today, the quiet burnout, what's happening underneath the surface, disconnection, overfunctioning, unspoken tension. And this embodied approach has grown through years of working with supporting clients with finding clarity, finding presence, embodied presence, as I like to call it, really being present in the body and with ourselves, finding connection, even when relationships and spaces are complex, being able to hold clarity through all of that complexity. And I believe that sometimes what's missing is not a tool or a framework, but a way of being met. And that is where my work begins.
Yeah, I really love that. And I love your work, Lisa. And I know how being in the body might be quite a new and novel thing for people to hear about. So we'll get a little bit into that in our conversation today. And I am an integrative health coach. I'm a trauma-informed integrative health coach, as well as somatic practitioner. I know that we share um, our training and modality, which is what brought us in a way together. Um, your focus is on leadership, on self-leadership. My focus is on health, on physical health, and how that's linked with the nervous system, the emotional, the mental state, and really the people that I work with and help women who are high functioning. And I don't like that term particularly, but it's us. I'm one of those women who are really high achieving, highly driven, really highly capable, highly intelligent, who get to a point in life where their bodies are showing signs of chronic health issues. And maybe over a long period of time, this has been developing. But what women do, and it goes to your point that, tools and plans and prescriptive type programs isn't necessarily what's needed, because a lot of women have done a lot of work on themselves. They've tried so many things, and it's not that those things are, there's anything wrong with them. It's just that when we are high functioning, we are often disembodied and we're not really connected to what's going on in our physical bodies. So a lot of women will have very high pain threshold, which we call resilience in our culture. So I know that we'll touch on that. And underneath that is the numbness. So oftentimes we don't feel that something is actually happening within our body. So in my work, I help women to get to the root of the health issues without treating symptoms, but working on repairing the nervous system so that the body can find its own way to healing and spark that self-healing capacity that's already innately built within us. So, yeah. So I could go on, but I'm going to pause because it would be really good, Lisa, if we could, maybe if you could lead us into that first point of our conversation, and that is how, if that's, oh, my screen just went black.
Oh,
Oh, okay. Here we go. You're back. We're back. How odd is that? But we're
tech.
back. Okay, great. I know this is tech, but we're back. Let me just double check the chat. Okay, I've got it here. So, yes. So on that first point that we want to explore is what is really high functioning and what is coping. We mentioned that it's a survival strategy. So, what are your thoughts, Lisa, on how this way of functioning is an adaptive process, is an adaptive survival mechanism? How does that work? Do you want to sort of start us off on this point?
Sure. This is one of my favorite topics. I could literally talk about this for days because
Yeah.
it's one of those things that are present so often, and we don't notice it because it's just the way we live. It's not just us as individuals, it's our whole culture. And I love what you said about resilience, because when I hear the word resilience, my whole body and nervous system goes, what? Like alarms go off, because that usually means, um, if you see it like in a an ad for a job, it usually, from where I'm sitting, it usually means we expect you to push the limits. We expect you to override your needs. We expect you to not get stressed out or suppress your stress, handle it yourself. So to me, when I see that language of resilience, I also see unsustainability. I do believe in true resilience, but I think that's not how we use the word in our culture. From where I'm sitting, most of us are in a survival mode, or at least partial survival mode,
Yeah.
unless we are really privileged or really lucky to have a job that really fits all of our needs, because most organizations, most systems around us are built on survival strategies, are built on unsustainable principles. And it's hard to create something different because it's all that is around us. Um, so when we talk about high functioning, I also want to talk about over functioning, like
Mm.
always doing more, always trying to make everything work, always holding it all, always saying yes, always taking on more, always being more productive. And one of the things where embodiment comes in with a different invitation, it is to do the exact opposite of what the systems are teaching us, which is why often if I talk to someone who's not used to embodiment, the first response is sometimes, how am I even going to do that? Like, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to check
Mm.
in with my body. I don't have time to slow down. I can sense the panic in the client's voice of like slowing down. That is like the worst thing. That's just going to make things worse because then I can't keep up with all the things. And that's exactly where we start. It's with taking a deep breath and feeling into that, where like that's the point. That's the point. If you can't slow down, take a break. If you can't slow down, check in with yourself, how you're feeling, what are your stress levels. If you don't have that space, if you don't have that capacity, if there isn't space to create that habit, that is part of the unsustainability, and that is part of why so many of us are burning out, not because we are a failure, not because the company we're in is a failure, but because the whole culture is so unsustainable, and it's all most of us know, because the way we're building this world is unsustainable. So this is a bigger shift than the individual dealing with burnout. With that said, the individual dealing with burnout, that's a big thing. It's not just a small, let's take a month or two off and then everything will be fine. This is a lifelong pattern, which is why embodiment is such a beautiful tool, because as you said, it goes to the root. It's not just treating the symptoms and then getting back to the same system. It's really feeling into what is happening here, what is not working for me, what do I actually need, which can be hard if we're surrounded by people who are not asking those questions, or an organization or a team where that is new, where you're the only person doing that thing. So this is a culture shift more than about the individual struggling with burnout, from where I'm sitting.
Oh my goodness, there is so much to respond to and to unpack. I I love that you and you would as a somatic practitioner, you know, we have this understanding of the system's impact on the individual. But so many women that I meet, and I'm sure that you meet as well, and in fact, that's how I felt myself. That somehow we are, you know, we are failing if we're not coping, or if somehow we are in overwhelm, that it's, you know, that we're lacking um, stress management, or better timekeeping, or, you know, we need a better routine, um, you know, but better self-care, which it is true, but the self-care that's required isn't that another external type thing. But what's required is a little bit more safety, just enough safety to be able to slow down and be able to attend to the body and the physiology. And this is, you know, the physiology is my jam. I am always been fascinated by how the nervous system works and the biology of stress and trauma. And I find that when people get that little bit of an insight into, oh, this is like my system protecting me. This is like an organic process that's happening because my system has learned that if I'm there are many different behaviors, right, that are part of high functioning and coping, such as perfectionism. Help me out, Elisa. What else?
I
People
oh,
pleasing.
yes, I was gonna say I often work with women who take on everything for everyone else. So they take
Yeah,
on the extra project, or they just check in on that other team, or they just do that extra uh, Friday afternoon event. They do all the extra things because one of the things that's helpful in embodiment is that we actually get to feel what we feel our needs, feel our boundaries. When we are in over functioning, we don't feel our
yeah,
boundaries. So we don't notice when people put more and more on our plate and we go, I can't carry anymore. We just go, I guess I just have to be stronger. And then
yeah.
we do, again, it's the culture of
The
going, I
grit.
just need to be more resilient. I just need to do more. I just need to look like I have it all together. And usually people have it together, right? The big
Yeah,
question is how do you feel? How does it feel to have it all together? And there's no judgment, right? One of my
yes,
core principles as a somatic practitioner is non-judgment. So
yeah,
it's not about saying if it feels bad there's something wrong with you. It's about observing it and noticing it doesn't feel good to hold all of that. It's not what I wanted to do. I didn't
yeah,
want this successful career and feeling like it's so heavy to hold. That was not what I wanted. So starting
yeah,
to notice what things actually feel like and then starting to adjust from there.
yeah. And it's really challenging in an emotion phobic culture that we live in, where feeling our feelings or what's happening with our bodies is somehow viewed as a weakness, or there are all sorts of different names that we have for women, specifically, that you're oversensitive or you're over emotional, or this is the culture doesn't help. Um,
Nope, not
and
at all.
also there is this perception that if you if you start to feel that you'll get so overwhelmed that all the things that you worked so hard for, whether it's the life you've built or the relationships that you have, that they'll crumble down. I really, really feel that fear from women. And I think you mentioned that as well, that, and so there is, that this bracing just continues because there isn't enough support for women to experience that slowing down doesn't mean that your life is going to crumble down, because it's done, especially through embodied approach and somatic work. It's done in such a gentle way that we are never going in, we are staying out of that overwhelm, and we work with it just enough so that there is capacity, and we're staying within capacity, which is such a novel concept, because
Yeah.
everything that high functioning is being outside of your capacity and just pushing through.
Let's take a breath there because that is,
I know.
mm, yeah, that is the thing. Um, for me, also in my own personal journey, that principle of safety first, slowing down, building enough safety first before we make decisions, before we make changes, before we build anymore, that has been game changing. And for most of us, it just feels like such a threat to even start building that because we're in that survival mode. When we're in that survival mode, we don't know that safety is possible. This is why I talk about embodied leadership, because from where I'm sitting, we need leaders who are leading in this. This is not about the
Mm,
individual burning out. This is about the leadership in our organizations, that they need to, or we need to be to say, listen, there's space for this. There's space for you to name if we have a structure that's stressing you out, because chances are if it's stressing you out, it's probably stressing someone else out also, right? If we
yes.
have a structure where everyone always just gives you extra tasks without checking in with you, or whatever the pattern is, is likely an organizational structure issue and not about the person burning out. Usually, the people who burn out first, they are sensitive. They're not too sensitive, but they're the wise ones. They're the ones who can tell you what's happening within the organization, what is not working, because they're just a symptom of an issue in the organization. And again, this is no judgment on the organizations itself. This is about sustainability. It's about shifting slowly into to a, I don't want to say a mindset, but a way of approaching the world that is sustainable, which is a huge shift because most of our structures are so unsustainable. So coming at it from that place of how do we create sustainability, and that does start with safety, with knowing that if there's something you need, it's not going to be a threat to your income, your way of life. There's something that we can build a structure of safety without the rug being pulled out from under you. And I think that's really important to know.
Yeah, really important. And really what comes to mind as I hear you talk about this is this over focus on individualism and self-regulation. We come from the world of somatics and embodiment and nervous system, and self-regulation, yes, it is our system that we can connect to in order to self-regulate. But leadership requires an ability to co-regulate with others, right? Which is really what I think you're talking about, that in organization there are leaders who are very, that they are able to self-regulate, but they aren't necessarily able to co-regulate with others and have this empathetic uh, approach to feeling what other people are going through. And so there is this disconnection, and that creates lack of safety. Organizations talk about psychological safety, but really what we're talking about is biopsychological safety. I know it's a jargon word, but is the felt sense of the what the other person is going through. That co-regulation is just such a uh, fundamental thing that I think is missing in so many different ways, and also in the way we approach our own healing. That it's like, oh no, I have to do something for myself. Well, the support is so fundamental of another human being that's able to receive you and hold space for what you're going through, that without that it's much harder for us to heal, or maybe even impossible, because we're such interconnected beings, that belonging is our fundamental biological need. Like, we cannot live without. Loneliness is the biggest health issue.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And this is often where we end up, right? If we think that we're failing, if we think that I
yeah,
can't cope with this, we shouldn't be coping, right? The goal shouldn't be to cope. The goal should be to thrive. And if you're not thriving,
yeah,
the job is to look at, well, where do I need to adjust, right? Where can I lean in to support? Where can I speak up? Where can I name something? Where are others not taking responsibility? Because it's
yeah,
usually about not just about us, but about where am I? What's the environment? And this brings us also to early life experiences, right? If we have um, survival patterns from childhood, if we experience emotional neglect, we're not going to ask for support. We're not going to notice early signs of burnout and say, oh, I think I need some support. We are going to be resilient and say, oh, I can do this. I can push myself through this. I can read the books. I can listen to the podcast. I can do this. I can do this. Again, this is our culture and then our personal trauma coming together and creating the perfect path to burnout. And this is, again, not about individual failure. It's really about noticing, what am I carrying? What am I holding? If we're holding those patterns of I can push through, then it's going to take more to lean into support than if we know that asking for help softening, saying, hey, something is not going the way it should be. I'm not sure what the answer is, but I really need to figure this out. For us to say that, even as adults, right? I'm 45. I'm still struggling with the asking for help thing. And I know that from so many clients that they know they need the help. And at the same time, it feels like such a big thing to ask for it, to find the right support. I
Yeah.
often say to clients, when you're showing up, that's half the work. Being here, being in the
Yes.
room and saying,
Yes.
I'm ready for the
Yes.
support, that's half the work. You can show up however you are. You can say, I'm scared of this. I don't know how to do it, or I want to run away.
Yeah.
That's completely welcome. That's where we work from. But the
Yeah.
work to actually get there, that's within us, right? The getting ready to, I need to have some more input here. I need to understand what's happening. That giving over the control, and you mentioned perfectionism, right? That plays in here also, of right, wanting to fix ourselves and doing it in a perfect way, right? Giving up that kind of control and saying, I don't know what the next steps are. I don't know how to fix burnout, because that's our mindset, right? How to fix burnout.
Yeah.
And the embodied approach is to say, well, it's not something to fix. It's something that tells you a story. It tells you that something is not working. So the exploration is how you're feeling, what is not working, how can we meet that, rather than saying, how can we make the burnout go away?
Yeah. I love that. And that that fixing, needing to fix is also a sign of coming from that coping survival state. Um, because oftentimes we're kind of stuck in the attic of our mind. I think this is this was coined by one of our mentors, Joe Miller. You know, the attic of our mind, and it's like we just try and solve everything in up here, in our problem solving mind. The problem is that the the problem is below our ears, right? It's in the body,
Yeah.
if we can call it even a problem. And oftentimes just being guided to that different way of being just can have such profound shifts for people. And I love what you said, how you approach clients. You know, everything is welcome. It's you are, all of you is part of you. There is nothing that is wrong or needing to be fixed. And that is really huge, because I think a lot of the wellness, fitness, health, personal development industries come from that place of, if you just change how you are thinking, or if you just change how your habits are, if you just change, and so that kind of keeps us in that spinning. We're just spinning round
Yeah.
the circle, and nothing's really essentially changing at the deeper level. So, um, yeah, I just kind of wanted to reiterate what you were saying, because I think it's really important. And then there is this physiological aspect of it, like chronic health issues. What happens in the body when we get stuck in one of the survival states, um, that our bodies aren't built for prolonged periods of stress.
Mm.
There'll be physiological changes in the body that lead to chronic health issues. Short-term stress is actually really good for us. It boosts our immune system, it boosts our focus, our cognitive function. But prolonged stress leads to chronic inflammation in the body. And we now know that that is at the root level of pretty much all chronic health issues. Science proves this now, which is why conventional medicine is struggling to help people with a variety of different chronic health issues. Because it requires a holistic approach. It requires the whole person. Look at the whole of you, and not just this particular thing that has, that we kind of label as a diagnosis and then trying to fix that without relation to everything else that really is encompassing of how the system got here. So
Yeah,
um
exactly.
yeah.
And when it comes to quiet burnout, the quiet part is also that we are so conditioned to not respond, to not tend to ourselves till
Mm,
things are really
yes,
loud, right? Most
yes.
of us need to like have something yelling us in our face, right, before we take it seriously. And that part of our
Oh
conditioning, the
yes.
part where we either suppress and say it will be fine, or where we can't actually feel what's going on in our
Yeah.
bodies, right? Where we can't actually feel how tired we are, if we can't feel how exhausted we are. Again, that's not about doing something wrong. It's a trauma response. If we're in that survival mode of numbing out, we're not going to be able to notice, hey, I'm actually slowly falling in energy, or I'm noticing my focus is this and this. We won't notice those things because we won't notice anything. And
Or
this
we'll
is
push
why,
through, or just push through it.
just push through. But this is why the first steps when I work with clients is about observing, because usually we have moved way past, even knowing what's going on within ourselves, both because we're holding too much and navigating, just as you're saying, just to cope, and also because we're not used to slowing down and checking in and noticing how I'm actually feeling. Oh, wow, I'm feeling different than I would like to, or I'm feeling at my limit, or I'm feeling, you know, that this is a yes or a no. It's when if we don't actually have the felt experience in the body. And as you're saying, if someone here is listening and they're like, I don't understand what the embodiment part is, and this sounds odd, I totally get it. I'm saying this as someone who lived the first 40 years of my life not really being able to feel things, and I was like, I don't know. I was burned out many times, and I couldn't feel when something was too much. I couldn't feel when something was, supportive or helpful, because I just wasn't able to feel into what was actually happening. And again, this is a trauma response. So learning to actually notice, my first step was to notice, I don't know what I feel. I
Yes.
started somatic healing with not knowing what I felt. And so many of my clients have the same pattern of, I'm not sure. When you're asking me what I'm noticing, I'm not noticing anything because no one has ever asked me before, right? Sometimes if I work with clients and I talk about needs, right? What do you need right now? If you could get whatever you wanted, what is the thing you need most? And the answer most often is, I have no idea. Well, tears are filling up their eyes because no one has ever asked me that, and I don't ask myself that. And again, this is not personal failure. This is because this is our
We're not
culture.
modeled this. We've never been modeled this.
No. So it's quite
Or
radical.
it is really radical, and embodiment can be weird. I think we know this very well, that embodiment work or somatic work can be weird because we live in a culture that has such a weird relationship with our bodies.
Yep.
It's either about the image or how we look, and is it acceptable to look this way or is it not acceptable to look this way. I mean, not even bringing the conversation about very different bodies that we are on this planet, and which bodies are, there is a hierarchical, we live in a
Mm.
culture that still has a hierarchy around that. I mean, there is just so much in our culture that is just really unhealthy relationship with our physical selves, which is really weird because it's like we are, our identities are embodied. Who we are is in our physical selves, and um, so there's this, learning, relearning, or maybe remembering. I think is the word of how the body can feel.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm just so, when I kind of learned this myself, that everything is interconnected in the body. So the nervous system takes kind of regulates all other systems in our bodies, um, from the immune system to the digestive system, the endocrine system, metabolism, how we, as you know, relationally, how we relate to ourselves, others, the world. I was like, oh, so when the nervous system comes into repair, everything else can find its way to better balance as well. And it's not that you never get ill or you don't, you know, feel difficult emotions ever in your life. No, that's not how it works,
Nope.
right? We know this very well. But it's just that you're able to bounce back a little bit more. And that's true resilience, right? You have a little bit more capacity to be with those difficulties in life. And physiologically, your body can just come back from illness quick, faster, and better. Um, so a cold doesn't turn into bronchitis and 4 weeks off work. Um, and so, or chronic pain doesn't get triggered and becomes an unexplained issue that your doctor hasn't got, doesn't know how to help you with, for example. Um, so I don't know whether I have anywhere to go from here, but yeah, I just kind of wanted to bring in the physiology aspect of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and absolutely.
Mm,
And I also just want to pick up on what you said um, around how we relate to the body, because I think where embodiment comes in and is different is that it's centered around care. And again, that shouldn't be radical, but it is in the world we're living in, right? Care is not that natural, it's not at the center of our systems, right? So we are also
and yet
conditioned
it's
to.
our deepest, one of our deepest needs, right?
Yes, and it's deeply human, but the way our systems are designed, they're designed around productivity, right? So we're also relating to the body as how can I make my body work faster, do more, produce more, perform more. This is a lot about performance, right? And relating to the body as a machine,
And
basically. And
extracting it, yeah.
exactly. It's so, our systems are so extractive. And the big shift here is to start to relate to ourselves, including our bodies, from care, noticing what do I actually need, what is actually present, staying curious rather than trying to push ourselves into delivering something, performing something.
Yeah. Yeah, that is just so profound. And it applies to, yeah, systems, organizations, and the individuals within. So, Lisa, I'm wondering, given that I'm keeping an eye on time, we've got about 13 or 15 minutes um, of our conversation, whether it would be really helpful to just talk a little bit about, we have mentioned it already, that shift of from depletion to embodied living and leadership. Would it be interesting and helpful to go a little bit into what is it that we're talking about in terms of resourcing and embodied self-care? If it's not, if it's not more tools or more, you know, different routines, um, another program, what is it? What does it look like? Would it be helpful to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Sure, it can be quite abstract, right? And I will say some of this is tools, right? Some of this is practices. And from where I'm sitting, without the relational part, without us practicing how am I showing up with myself in these practices, those tools and practices will not shift anything, right? Because we can all do breath work and then go back to pushing through our day. Then breath work is not going to do anything big for us.
Yeah.
So the shift, which is what I'm helping people with, right? What you are helping people with. The shift is for this to not be tools and for this to not be another course or another
Mhm.
symptom treating trend, right? This is the bigger shift, which is why. And again, if you're listening and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm not going to do any life-changing things that feels overwhelming, I get it, because shifting into new ways of being isn't, it isn't like a small, easy thing we can check off our list, which is also why it works, right? We know this from any habit that we're changing, that if we're actually
Hmm.
changing a lifelong habit, it's going to impact our lives. It's also why we often postpone it, because it's like, oh my goodness, it's a lot of changing. And I just want to name that because it's not necessarily easy, right? It's not necessarily going to be like, oh, this is fun. I just have to learn these three things and then everything will shift. These
Oh,
are
that's so
deep
mm.
rooted issues, right?
Just to say, this is such an important point because change interacts with our identity, and at the deeper level, and we will prevent ourselves from healing just to
Yeah.
preserve our,
What is?
uh, perceived sense of safety, um,
Yes.
which in high functioning is not really the safety that our bodies require now. It's just that little bit of false
Let's
sense of safety.
let's take a breath there because I love that point. That is such
Yeah.
a and again, this is a trauma response, right? If
Yeah.
we don't know true safety, false safety is going to look like as good as safety is going to be.
Yeah.
So if we don't know, listen, there are ways of working and showing up in your life where you don't have to push through. You might have never experienced it, and this is why it feels like it's not possible, but they are out there. What embodiment does is to help you start feeling that, to actually feel it in your body, not just understand in your mind, okay, it's possible to slow down, it probably feels good, it's nice to rest sometimes, but to actually feel in your body, oh my goodness, this is what it feels like in my body, in my nervous system, what happens within me, what happens in my inner world when I start shifting into a different way of being, when I actually allow space in my everyday life. One of my favorite somatic practices is a simple check-in, which again sounds so simple, but most of us don't check in with ourselves during the day, right? So to,
Nope.
for example, starting our workday with checking in, not starting with emails, not starting with a to-do list, not starting with a phone call, starting with checking in and saying, how am I feeling? Where am I today? How much energy do I have? Oh, I didn't sleep well last night. So it's not like a big capacity day. So maybe I can, postpone something for tomorrow, or maybe I can, make a little shift, or maybe it's not today. I'm writing that big article. I can do that tomorrow, just checking in with where am I? Are there little adjustments that can help me? Can I ask for support? Is there something my assistant could help me with? Is there something my team can help me with? Checking in with where am I actually, and then doing that throughout the day, right? Noticing what do I need? Do I need an earlier lunch? Do I need more support somewhere? Do I need is and this can be both in the small things, right? But it can also be in the bigger issues. It maybe we have a whole project going that is actually unsustainable, but we haven't noticed because everyone on the team is in survival mode. So it can
Oh
also
gosh,
be
yes.
bigger shifts, which can be terrifying, right? Because again, if you're listening and you're like, I'm not going to change the whole project because everything is going to fall down, I hear you, and that is terrifying. This is kind of built into uh, uh, from where I'm sitting, sustainable burnout recovery, right? That there is a falling apart, which is the part that is scaring most of
Yeah,
us,
it
right?
is.
Because there are things that are going to fall apart. That false sense of safety that comes from I have it all together, the grasping, the like, I can do it, that is going to fall apart. And if we don't know what comes instead of that, that can make us panic. And that is one of the big shifts in working in an embodied way. We don't start by taking that false
No.
safety away. We start by creating real safety first.
Oh,
Finding
that's
out
beautiful.
how
That's
can we help you, you know, tune into yourself? How can we help you be well rested? Your nervous system starting to repair, and then we can start to talk about how to
yeah.
create the changes. We
Oh,
don't attack the changes, we don't tear down. First we
yeah,
build capacity, connection,
yeah.
more focus, then we start looking at what needs adjustment.
Such a huge point. Really, really important point because I think there is a lot of perception that things have to happen in some kind of a cathartic way. and that changes happen overnight or very quickly. There's just some kind of a enlightenment that comes in, and that's not how things work, because our nervous system requires a very, very gentle approach
Yeah.
because of that, of the biology that's there to really preserve our safety. And yeah, so that's, I think that's just, if people are taking anything away from this conversation, I think this is such an important point, that it's approached in a very slow way, in gentle way, that does not go beyond the capacity of the body in this moment.
No, it's really about listening. And this
Yeah.
is I we work, I mean, I'm assuming that you're working like I do, client led, so it's really listening to where is the
Yes.
client. I don't tell you what the next thing is. You tell me where you are and then I respond to that, because this is about your life. Where are you? How can you navigate this? And all of our
Yes.
lives, all our situations are different. This is why I'm talking about there is no framework, because it's not about doing 3 steps and then it works. It's about meeting you where you are, which is what I model with my clients, so that hopefully over time they start meeting themselves in that way, right? Start noticing,
Yeah.
what is it that I need? So it doesn't become that loud, the quiet burnout that slowly builds into something, is until something is really, really loud. But they start to
Yes.
notice, listen, in the beginning, there's something quiet moving underneath the surface. What is this?
Mhm.
I need to listen to this, and start becoming curious. So the quiet, it's still quiet, but what we practice is the tuning in, starting to
Yes.
notice,
That
oh, something feels a
attunement.
little bit off. Something feels not the way I would like it to feel. Something
Yeah.
needs tending here.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Um, and yes, because what we are looking for is for our own agency to come forth, right? Our own ability um, to tend to our needs and to give ourselves what we need in the complexities that we live in, and those are very valid. All our circumstances are very valid. I do also find that sometimes in our personal development industry, circumstances are still considered like, oh, you can, if you just change the way you look at it, well, it's
Mm,
that's not always how it works, because
no.
the circumstances, as you've already described at the beginning, if you're in an organization and that system is not, and structure is not set up for, is not conducive for you attending to your needs, then you as an individual isn't, you're not going to thrive. So but I wanted to just mention one other thing, when you were talking about, breath work, and there are so many trends in how to care for ourselves, what to do. And one thing that really, really struck me when I was getting into embodiment work, and I was learning about, why is it that a yoga class, I go through a yoga class, and I feel different after the yoga class, but then I go back into my, you know, a relationship or my work, and I am not meeting things in a new way. I am back being reactive. I am back being shut down, or whatever the particular pattern is. And it's because we that shift has to happen at the deeper level. And when we are just um, doing breath work or any of the other type of embodied movement, because they are embodied movement, without that internal sense, felt sense, it's just another pattern being layered on top of a pattern.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's not really, so if people, I'm speaking to this because I know a lot of my clients will say, I'm skeptical because I've tried this and I've tried that, and and it's either short term, it works short term, or they see
Yeah.
some longer term progress. Like, I love yoga and I've done it for 12 years, and I sense that it's helped my body. So there is some shift, but it's not really at that level
Yeah.
that's required, because that attunement isn't something that you learn, unless of course the guide is guiding you to your impulse sense. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that point. And I love the, again, skepticism is welcome. I have many clients who are like, I'm just trying this out. Let's just see how it is. And, that's healthy. It's healthy to show up and not just assume that it will be working. I can only speak from where I'm sitting. The reason I am so passionate about somatics and that I believe embodied approaches is the way forward in creating sustainable change is because it does give us over time it gives us an inner map, a map of understanding who am I and what's actually happening within me. For most of us, um, we don't know. We don't know what is happening within ourselves. We don't know when we shut down. We just shut down, and then we are all of a sudden, fighting with our partner. We're not actually noticing, oh, I'm shutting down emotionally now, and now I'm responding from a different place within me. We just shut down, which again is a very common burnout pattern. Like if you just don't have more capacity, the body is going to say, I'm just going to shut down. We can't engage in this because you just need to shut this down and not spend your energy
Yes.
on this. And what embodiment and somatic work gives you is that map of understanding, oh, now I'm feeling pressure, or now I'm feeling ready for this, and now I'm not feeling ready for this, or now I need some tending, or now I need to speak up, or this is not the person to do business with, or this is the right match for me for a friendship or a partnership like that. And again, it's just saying it's not like life doesn't come with complexities. It's not like everything is going to be perfect, but it's going to give us a map of understanding. Why do I feel attracted to this kind of work? Or why do I always show up in this kind of way in my leadership or in my team? Or why am I always showing up this way in relationship? It helps us understand who we are, which sounds so simple. But if we don't have that map, if we don't know how to navigate ourselves, it's going to be, either chaos, which is the case for a lot of us. Again, I'm saying this with no judgment. This is what trauma looks like. If we haven't had that clear pattern of what is happening within me, it's safe to check in. I can look in the dark corners and notice what is there without being scared, which most of us don't have. Unless we learn that in a safe way, it's going to be really confusing. So for some of us, it's chaos. For some, it's just like a big black hole of not knowing what's happening within us. For some, it's more like a fog. For some, it's like, oh, and sometimes in glimpses, I know what's happening. Sometimes I don't. For
Yeah.
me, what I see both with myself and with clients is that those somatic tools slowly give us more clarity. So we can see, oh, this is why I'm always showing up in this way, or this is why I'm always angry when this happens, or this is why this feels like pressure, or
Yeah.
this is why I keep doing this thing, even though I wanted to do something else, but I keep saying yes to this. It's
Yeah.
because we start to understand, oh, that's how I'm showing up. This is who I am. So it's really about who we are.
But the yeah and it's not about going back to the past and understanding what happened. This is such a fundamental point to make,
Yeah.
isn't it? In what you're saying, that this is not about analyzing what happened in the past or trying to remember what happened to the past, because
No.
the system is nonverbal. Our nervous system and the body is doesn't have the same language as our cognitive executive functioning. So this is why we have to work with at the body level in order to meet what's in the system at that place.
Yeah.
So
I love that you call it a language. Yeah, that's also my vocabulary. I
body's
usually talk.
language rather than body language. I think we can
Yeah,
also understand body language as in, oh, I'm reading somebody's movements, which is also a whole new conversation, because
that's a different
the
conversation.
research shows something completely different. But yes, body's language is, yeah.
Yeah, I talk about reconnecting with the body and learning to speak its language, learning to understand what does it mean when my body tells me this. What does it mean? What is this sensation? What is this thing that I'm noticing? What is this feeling within me? What does that actually mean? That's what I meant by a map, like learning to understand, hey, what's actually happening here. So it's absolutely not about revisiting the past. This is not therapy, right? This is not about storytelling, and this is not about analyzing. It's about learning to understand what's actually present in my body, what's actually present in my nervous system, and learning to meet that. in gentle ways, in ways that build sustainability and that guides us towards thriving rather than surviving.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. And I feel like that was almost like a little concluding thought as well of our conversation about navigating quiet burnout. Is there I'm trying to think whether there is anything else that we want to add before we start to move towards landing and closing our conversation. This has been really wonderful, enriching.
It's been a lovely conversation. I mean, as I started by saying, I could talk about this for days, and I
I
feel
know.
like this conversation could go on for another hour because there are so many things to touch on. But I think we touched on a lot of the core issues, especially of how we both work and how our work overlaps, right? I love that we have different approaches where mine is somatic and relational, and yours is somatic and about health and well being, right? I think both approaches are so important. And I really
Yes.
appreciate this opportunity to have this conversation.
Yeah, it's been lovely. This is my first LinkedIn Live after quite some time, so it's a real pleasure to kind of come back with you, Lisa, um, as a guest and the the person to dialogue with about this. And perhaps we'll do this sometimes at another point after the summer again, just to bring in more of an embodied approach to the conversation about and
Absolutely. We could do a part two.
yeah, exactly. So I've just checked. I don't see any comments. I'm not even sure who has joined live or hasn't. So we just go with what is.
Tech again.
Yeah, that's it. So on this note, I'd like to just say a huge thank you, Lisa. I really love your work and thank you for being here for this
Thank you so much
conversation.
for the invitation and the lovely conversation.
Take care. Bye, everyone. Bye, Lisa. Bye.